Hello, my people. Welcome back. It's nice to be back in our video lecture sessions. I dearly miss them, and I hope that my commentary will keep on pleasing you and making you excited to take more video lecture notes. All right, my friends. So our first module, Unit 7, Part 1 is focused on motivation and emotion, and then Part 2 is going to be personality. So for our section, we're going to be sectioning off Unit 7, Part 1, and then we'll also be having a separate test for Unit 7, Part 2, which will be personality. So further ado, let's get started on our motivational end of our modules. So we'll start with motivation, and then we'll lead up to emotion. So what is motivation, right? So again, it's kind of those things where we know what it is, but do we really know what it is? So motivation is a need or a desire that energizes and directs behavior. It brings us towards a goal. A big one is what is this athlete's motivation, right? And usually the four big parts of motivation are biological, cognitive, social, and emotional. Biological, cognitive, social, and emotional. These are the four kind of avenues that motivation stems from, right? So our motivation to eat would be biological, right? Our motivation to impress our friends would be more social, right? Motivation to not feel bad anymore would come from our emotional center, right? So again, different aspects of where our motivation stems from. So before we dive in too much, we gotta know our basics of our intrinsic and our extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is when you do something for yourself. You only do it for yourself. So intrinsic motivation is the desire to, here, let me hide this. Okay, sorry, one of my little bars came up. So intrinsic motivation is the desire to engage in tasks that are inherently satisfying and enjoyable and novel. And it's to do something for ourselves, right? It's to do something for ourselves. And again, intrinsic motivation are like your hobbies, things that you do for yourself and no one else, right? So clearly this guy that's scaling the wall, I hope he's doing it for himself because I don't know if he's doing it for anyone else, right? He's not doing it for a grade. And extrinsic motivation is you are influenced by an external factor or influences. Let me move my little camera so you can see the full thing. Such as rewards, grades. You do things based off of consequences that you're maybe trying to avoid, or social expectations, right? So again, intrinsic versus extrinsic. Intrinsic, you do it for yourself, like hobbies. Extrinsic is grades. You're doing something that has an external factor or influence. Okay. So before we get into the theories of motivation, we do have to think about the evolutionary lens. And within the evolutionary lens, we have instinct. Okay. It's almost like our gut feeling when it came to problem solving, right? So it's a complex behavior that is rigidly patterned throughout a species, and it is unlearned. I'm going to sip my Diet Coke, my friends. An instinct is not taught. So if we think of conditioned versus not unconditioned, this instinct is unconditioned. Birds who fly south for hibernation, that is an instinct. There isn't a bird class that they take and they're like, okay, we're gonna fly south at this date, right? It's instinctual. A bird makes a house because it's instinctual, right? Back when we were cavemen, it was an instinct in order to have a place to be safe, right? To find an area for ourselves, to have like a home, right? It's instinctual. So now let's get out of all the instincts and let's talk about theories of motivation. And this is kind of the list that we're going to go through, might as well. So we're going to go over drive reduction theory, optimal arousal theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, cognitive dissonance, and evolutionary theory. Okay, so drive reduction theory is one of the big theories that the AP test loves to talk about. So, and I took this little graph from your textbook. So, drive reduction theory is a physiological need that motivates to satisfy that need. So that sounds kind of crazy, right? A psychological need that motivates to satisfy that need. You're like, what is that, Miss H? Well, let me tell you. It's a drive reduction theory. So we have a need. So say that Sally's stomach starts to growl. Her body knows that she has a need for food. That is then going to drive her to go find food. We have a need. It's going to lead to a drive. And once Sally eats her big juicy hamburger from In-N-Out, her need is going to be reduced. It's a drive reduction theory. We have a drive because we have a need. And then once that need is taken care of, it is reduced. Our behavior is now reduced. We no longer have to eat any more hamburgers since we're full after the one, right? Or two for those. We also have something that is called homeostasis, right? And again, this is very nature-driven, right? So this drive reduction theory, this is very evolutionary lens. We have a need that will lead to a drive that will lead to a reduce of drive, right? So if Sally is thirsty, she has the drive to seek out water. Or in Miss H's case, when Miss H is thirsty, she has a need to search out Diet Coke. Once Miss H has the sip of Diet Coke, my need is now being reduced and I no longer am looking for, my Diet Coke, which in reality I probably am, right? But anyway, so homeostasis is the tendency to maintain balance or a constant internal state. So for us, again, basic temperature around 98 degrees, it's our homeostasis, it's our body's natural resting state, right? It's where we're all balanced, right? And remember, our hypothalamus, our janitor, helps take care of all this, right? So when we get really hot, our bodies sweat, again, maintaining homeostasis. So let's talk about the drive, and this goes with our, above theory, but remember, our drive is the push, the urge to satisfy the need, right? So Sally has a drive to fix her hunger. She doesn't want to be hungry anymore, right? And this also comes with incentives. So incentives can be positive or negative environmental stimuli that motivates the behavior, right? So an incentive could be like you have a drive to eat really sugary food, right? And then, but maybe your incentive is, okay, I'm going to finish this homework first, and then I'm going to go treat myself to a nice Starbucks, right? So those are incentives to help pull those drives, right? So again, it's very push and pull, but think of it as very basic in caveman. The drive reduction theory, very basic in caveman, okay? It's instinctual, okay? All right, so now we have our optimal arousal theory, and this is also known as the Yerkes-Dodson law. So when we talk about human motivation, it aims not to just eliminate arousal, but to seek optimal levels of arousal. And what do I mean by arousal? It's essentially your energy level. It's your energy level. So we perform best when our arousal is moderate, when it's in the middle. So what studies have found, again, correlational studies, right? We're not doing cause and effect, but generally we try to increase arousal when we're bored. So say that, okay, so imagine you're bored at home and let's just say you don't have a phone, right? What are you going to do? You're going to go bug your siblings because you want to have some state of arousal, right? So if you're too bored, you're going to seek out to entertain yourself, right? Or if you're too aroused, if you're too stressed, you're going to look for ways to de-stress yourself. So it's almost like the three bears, right? Like the porridge, right? So one's too hot, one's too cold, and one is just right. And we like to be right in the middle of our arousal. We want to be right in the middle. We're not too bored, but we're also not too stimulated, right? We like to be in the middle. And this is the Yerkes-Dodson law. We do the best when we're in the middle, okay? Our next one, my Maslowians. How many times am I going to teach the hierarchy of needs? Who knows? But we're coming at it again. So hierarchy of needs under Maslow, humanistic perspective, right? Everyone's born good. We don't focus on the past, but the present, right? So Maslow's pyramid of human needs, they're like steps, and in order to get to the next step, you have to make sure that you have a strong, stable. So it's almost like climbing a ladder. You have to make sure you have the lower level before you build on top of the level before you. It's right. So you have to climb the pyramid, and so the pyramid starts. And this is what I talk about all the time. Are their needs being met? When I say that, we're looking at the hierarchy. So this bottom layer is physiological needs, food and water. We cannot get anywhere in life if we cannot satisfy the need to eat and drink, right? It's a biological need to survive. After that, the next step is safety and needs. So once you have food and water, you need to feel that the world is organized and predictable, and you need to have a safe place. So a lot of people say they have their room as their safe place. Do you have a safe place to stay, right? Do you have a safe place to stay? And after you have a secure home, then our next level is belonging and love and needs. So this is where you can start building relationships. You can start having beneficial friendships, right? You can start, maybe start dating, right? So again, but you have to have those first two. So once you start building your belonging and love in your relationships, your self-esteem starts to rise, and you start to build your self-esteem needs, right? So achievement, competence, independence, your need for recognition, respect from others, right? And so essentially you keep climbing, and finally, once you have all these needs met, you start to self-actualize. You start to be the best person that you can be, right? But you have to follow these steps. And so when we think about the perspectives, the buzzword is what needs are not being met, right? And it follows with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So let's say that Sally is bouncing around from foster home to foster home. She hasn't had a stable, house for a long time, and she's starting to flunk school. And we can tell that where her needs aren't being met is in the safety needs, right? So we can see how if we don't have one or the other, all the rest start to crumble, okay? Okay. Our next theory is evolutionary theory, right? So again, according to evolutionary theorists, our main motivator in life is to survive. So we can spread our gene pool. So all our behaviors derive from that main motivation. So evolutionary theory, we have a need to survive. The theory is that that's our main motivator. There's a reason that we run away from a building on fire, right? Or like we have some urge to survive, right? So we have a need to survive. So that is the evolutionary theory. That is the base of it. We have a need, our motivator in life is to survive and to reproduce. So very caveman-like, right? Very caveman-like. And then we also have the cognitive dissonance theory. Sorry that I got a little, this is a little broken up, but cognitive dissonance theory. And cognitive dissonance is a vocab term, and it comes up a lot on the AP test. So when we have dissonance, it's when there's a difference in our beliefs. So let's say this. So it's when we have an attitude that clash together, or we have a belief system that is clashing. So say this. So say that Sally is a diehard no drugs, right? So she in high school, she's like tells all her friends, I never do drugs, like la la la, right? And say that Sally starts dating a boyfriend, Bob, right? Who smokes cigarettes. He's a chain smoker. And Sally's like, so what Sally has is that she has this belief, like, I'm not going to do drugs. I'm not going to hang around people who do drugs. My boyfriend does drugs. So there's this dissonance that's clashing. There's these beliefs that are clashing, and it's not okay for our brain. So what our brain is going to do is we're going to try to solve it, right? And so what's going to happen is that we have an inconsistency between our attitudes and our beliefs, which is going to lead us to either saying, Sally's either going to do two things. She's going to break up with him, or she's going to say, oh, well, he doesn't smoke around me, so, me not doing drugs is still true, right? So she's rationalizing the dissonance to make it make sense, right? So for example, I believe that smoking, vaping is bad for me, yet I smoke and vape. This dissonance exists. We have, some term. So usually when this dissonance is occurring in our brain, this is where our anxiety starts to pop up, where there's some you're confused about how to approach a situation, right? So we are motivated to reduce this anxiety by resolving the clashing of our thoughts. Right? Sorry. So anyway, so essentially you have two options, right? So for cognitive dissonance theory, the two options are, change your mind on your beliefs, or you rationalize to have your beliefs make sense and for them to fit together. But remember, the dissonance is when your beliefs are clashing, okay? When your beliefs are clashing. Okay, and so for the last slide of our, that's weird how it did that. Hopefully if I click on that, okay, good. Okay, so hold on. Okay, so last slide before we end this first video. So an additional psychological perspective is called we're gonna look at the self-determination theory, and that is a vocab term. And the self-determination theory is this. We can optimally function and be a good human being and be able to have growth and satisfy our psychological needs if we have these three things in our life. Okay, so in order for a human being to be satisfied with psychological growth and success, this theory states that you need to have these three things. You need to have autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Okay, so autonomy, what does that mean? Your ability to make your own choices. So for this in your notes, you can write going off to college. That's why it's such a big deal where you're finally, leaving and making your own rules, right? Becoming your own person, right? So autonomy is huge when it comes to growing out of your teenage years into your 20s, right? Autonomy and making your own choices, making your own bedtimes, you're no longer dictated by your parents, right? And then we have competence. Mastering appropriately challenging tasks. We are able to make small goals, we're able to make longer goals, and we have the resources that allow us to get there, right? And also relatedness. And I'll get rid of this, but it's feeling attachment to others with security and intimacy. So almost like relatedness is the strong attachments that Maslow talks about, which is love and belonging, right? So if you have these three things, you'll have optimal human functioning and positive psychological growth and success, according to this theory. All right, my friends, that's it for this first video. I'll see you for the next.